So I travel to Washington every week from Bowling Green, Kentucky, where I live, and then I return at the end of the week. And I've been married 33 years as of last week. And I get home and I think, when I knock on the door, my wife lets me in, I think, well, she'll have my slippers, maybe a hug and a kiss, maybe a martini. And you know what I usually get when I get home? I open the door and you know what she says to me? How come Anthony Fauci's not in jail yet? But it's not for lack of trying. I've referred him twice to the Department of Justice, but there is this guy over there, the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, who may be the most partisan Attorney General we've had. There used to be some sense of distance between the Attorney General and presidents in politics, but I think there is no longer. And we have the proof. We'd submitted the proof. Essentially, Anthony Fauci, in his own words, has admitted the truth. He lied at Congress, which is a felony, and we have the proof. It's in his own emails. It's in his own words. But if you look back in time and you want to know when the cover-up began, when the conspiracy began, it really began January 31st of 2020. The virus had only been out a couple weeks in China. The Chinese were still saying, it's not transmitted between humans. This was months after the virus had really erupted. We know now that the virus started in the lab, that the first 3 people sick, we actually know their names, worked in a lab in Wuhan. They worked for Dr. Shi, the one they call the great bat scientist. The first patient 0 they actually think is Ben Hugh, a scientist who worked for her. We know that because they declassified that in the Trump administration. They declassified that these 3 were sick. The X-ray findings were consistent with COVID. There wasn't a test for COVID. They had a test for the first SARS-1, the one that was the pandemic back in 2003 and 2004, but they didn't yet have a COVID test. But they had all the signs and symptoms of it. Will we ever prove they had it? Well, we could have early on in the disease if they'd come forward and admitted the truth and subjected serum for antibody analysis. We could have proved that they were the first patients. But all of the evidence points to that. We know the Chinese were dishonest in their death count. All likelihood, millions of people died in China, and yet there was no real accounting for that.